Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise. And we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. I welcome you to our show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. As a host, I'd be very, very grateful if you could just press that subscribe button. We need your support, we need your involvement, we need your engagement. We, as usual, bring you life-changing, empowering, energizing information, and I have a guest just for that job. His name is Kaene Disepo. Mr. Disepo, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mogobe.
Yeah. Be kind enough to just tell the viewer who you are in terms of your background and what you do.
Fantastic. So, rightfully stated, my name is Kaene Disepo, and academically, I finished in 2011. I finished my BGCSE here, and at the time, I was recognized as the Ministerial Award recipient, having finished as the second best student in the country. And this was really a humbling experience because for me, Nikin in one of the townships of Gaborone, actually just close to Old Naledi. So it was...
You're a fellow Kasi guy.
I am.
Because me, I'm from Bunke.
Is it? That's where you stand.
Yeah.
So it's good. Yes. So it was, again, a humbling experience. So I finished and I went overseas where I finished my Bachelor of Sciences in International Relations at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Later, I did my master's in development management, still at the LSE, where I came back as a development consultant. But more so, I started two organizations, one being Inspired Horizons Association.
Inspired Horizons.
Yes, that one specifically looks at improving access to quality education in the country, and then also women's empowerment and gender equality. Whilst Change Africa, more specifically, we are looking at development of thought leadership in the country, having born and raised one flagship project that's called Debate Botswana, which we'll get on.
Yes, yes. So since you when did you graduate and what have you been doing since?
Yeah, so I graduated my master's in 2018. Since then, I've done a number of consultancy projects, having partnered with the likes of United Nations through UNESCO, UNFPA, World Bank. I've done with German Development Corporation, GIZ, the EU as well. But really through, encouraging policy reform in ICT, good governance, and I'm grateful that I've also been appointed in a number of boards, including the Botswana National Youth Council, having been appointed by Honorable Minister Rakari. And also where now I'm serving as the official National Youth Delegate on all Commonwealth Affairs 2021-2023. Wow. And then also I've recently been appointed to join the steering committee of the Generations Unlimited, which is an arm for United Nations ECOSOC, of which our country president, His Excellency Masisi, is actually the champion of it. So we are his steering arm.
What is Genu all about?
So Genu, it looks at the empowerment of youth, more specifically young people who are often marginalized, different backgrounds, the impoverished, the financially challenged, the vulnerable children and young people. So what we strive to do is promote equality. So equality through equality of opportunities, but may also prioritizing that they meaningfully participate in different forums. So development agenda setting, where we're speaking about the ideation of, development in itself, and then also looking at implementation, making sure that young people are included in the implementation rollout strategies, and most importantly, accountability. So how we can make sure that young people or even children, they amplify their voices enough to know that they can hold leaders accountable. And we do this by exercising the different mechanisms of accountability through voice as well as exit. So
yeah, we'll go into them in a moment.
Fantastic.
But how did you convince HE to become your champion? How did that process develop?
You know, what's interesting is that I didn't. I was called. So I received a call from the office of the president, and it was at the time I was actually doing an engagement in Khanzi, where community engagement, and you know, I was very hungry. But I'm getting a call from Office of the President. I'm being told that I've actually been selected to join the steering committee for Genu. And of course I knew what Genu was, just because of the space that I find myself in. But what was also humbling was that this would be the steering committee for His Excellency. So they just asked for my email so that they can send the letter. But I think over time it was because of the work that I do, particularly with the young people, ensuring that we raise the voices of the marginalized and often at times silenced.
Yeah. There's a lot to cover, but we've divided it into bite-sized chunks so we can cover it quickly and effectively. The first area is amplifying voices in terms of what you are doing and what your interest is in that general category of activity. How are you amplifying voices?
Well, I think, you know, before that, it's about the motivation, where it actually comes from. And similarly, as you say, you're, you know, homeboy. It's more important for people like us, especially who understand, having grown up in a place where it's often marginalized. We don't talk about them, they're the townships, right? And from there, our encounter is that we have amazing young people with incredible talents, you know, talents that often at times go unnoticed. So what I wanted to make sure is that we're creating a platform where it's not about giving a young person a voice, but really amplifying that voice, because it's already there. And it's really about making sure that the platforms that directly affect the well-being of a young person, that young person is there. So gone are the times when we're really talking about being spoken for. And I think to some extent, I'm one of those believers who argue that representative democracy in itself is a bit far-fetched, because we don't need leaders to speak for us. We need to make sure that we are afforded a place at the table. So it's really about creating safe spaces for young people to amplify their voices, especially those that have gone unnoticed.
And use the vehicle of Debate in Botswana.
Yes.
You founded it when, and what has it achieved so far?
So Debate in Botswana, I founded it actually in the middle of the pandemic, August 2020. And it's an initiative that focuses on creating safe spaces for young people to debate and engage on key development issues of this country. And we bring adjudicators or judges who are actually leading industry experts in those fields, and also who have held or still holding various leadership positions. And what's important about that is that we're giving the young people an opportunity to interact by highlighting the country, what they would like to see better in terms of the economic welfare of their country, and even having the industry experts nudge in and offer insights and even mentorship opportunities. What's brilliant about this is that the rewards of the winners, what they get is actually an opportunity to put to action their words. So they get to be mentored by the judges so that they can conduct community-based projects.
How many debates have you had, and in other words, how many winners have you had?
To date, I think we've had 23 debates.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot. And we have cemented strategic partnerships, I think about 14 now.
In less than a year, 23?
In less than a year. In less than a year. It was
how
really
often, how frequently are these debates?
So they differ. We have where we do tournaments. So the International Youth Day debates, for instance, which will be coming up, that's 7 debates. And then we also have what we call Youth in Leadership debates. So the Youth in Leadership debates, so they run for about 4 months. and that's when you have the debaters winning, and then you have them do community engagement projects.
Okay, let's talk policy engagement now. You've already alluded to that. Look, these youngsters have to speak for themselves.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily have. So how do you promote the policy engagement aspect?
So we do it in two ways. One, again, is through the debate platform. So that's giving them an opportunity, especially for the policymakers, to see that actually young people, they know what they're talking about. Thought leadership is making sure that you're influencing a narrative based on your capabilities and your skill sets and just the knowledge that you have. But two, what we do is we hold what's called high-level stakeholder presentations. So we ask our young people to prepare topic guides. So after you have that debate, you do a topic guide, which is an in-depth study into that particular field or that topic area. And then we hold high-level stakeholder engagement. This is where we're actually bringing in more of the different stakeholders in those key leadership positions. And the young people are presenting to them and are also advocating for the inclusion of those young people to be in the different technical working groups. They find themselves now even at national technical working groups where they're fundamentally changing policies. So it's one of key performance
Are these
indicators.
processes or these debates recorded or
Yes, they're live
archived?
streamed. Yes, every debate that we do is live streamed.
And how does one access that?
The Change Africa Facebook page, you can get to see them.
Okay.
Yes, and the incredible judges that we have had and the participants. We do individual profiling of every single participant to see the kind of in-depth knowledge they bring.
One other chunk to discuss is Groth Stimulus, to ensure you include youngsters in, growth stimulating activities via Change Africa.
Absolutely.
This is also part of your brainchild, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Tell us about it.
So we look at capacity building. So we do skills training and capacity building exercises to make sure that the young person of which we're promoting or encouraging and advocating to be, introduced to those various leadership positions, they too have the necessary skill sets, right? So what we do is we look at how well we can instill influencing skills. So the ability to be confident, the ability to hold a conversation with the likes of Mr. Mogobe, for instance, and not fidget, and don't take your eye off, and making sure that whatever you're talking about.
Does it entail having workshops and symposia?
So, yes, so we do workshops. Sometimes we do 2 workshops per
And these are done online?
They're done online as well as hybrid, where we do physical, where we actually just bring the participants alone, and then we record so that the other people who are not able to attend because of COVID, they can watch. Yes. Again, this is on the Change Africa.
This is streamed also
Yes.
on Change Africa.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of financial burden or expense involved in any of this?
It is. I mean, what we do is we offer the services free, and we rely on our partners. So we ask for support, sponsorship. We have a number that have supported us. Even the live streaming, what we do is we have partnered with a production company, so they facilitate all these things. But it's very strenuous, and of course, it's an important feat. However, again, understanding is that we do need more resources, particularly if we want to expand beyond Gaborone as well.
Is there a sacrificial element on your part?
I mean, everything I do is it's a great sacrifice. I mean, to date, everything that you'll be seeing, apart from our partners, I have foot the bill. So it's about, again, passion. I'm very passionate about making sure that young people are offered the platform to lead. And if it means being broke to do it, then that's the sacrifice.
Well, you can also shamelessly plug and tell, look at the the potential sponsors in the eye, tell them what's in it for them, tell them how they can be part of this.
Absolutely. So, what we are calling for right now is every single stakeholder who particularly believe in the development of our nation, particularly through inclusive engagement of young people. What we do at Debate Botswana is that we offer an opportunity for our, our partners to enhance continuous professional development. There's an opportunity where actually your employees, they can mentor our debaters. They can also participate by being adjudicators for our debates as well. But most importantly, we get to develop policies and policy proposals, and we do this by co-creating the solutions with the various as partners that we have. We also have a number of partners prior to this, and it's not just local but international partners as well.
Yeah.
And this extends from the United Nations, which offers a great networking opportunity for all of our partners, particularly in the space of innovation, science, research and develotment.
Okay, let's get back to where we were after that shameless plug, which is
really,
quite,
thank you so much.
Which is quite appropriate. Let's talk about exposure, how you develop them in terms of inclusion, engagement, and impact of youngsters and with policymakers, and how debating Change Africa specifically.
Yeah.
Or Change Africa is part of Debating Botswana, is it? Or they're two separate organizations?
So Change Africa, that's the development company that birthed Debating Botswana.
Okay,
yes.
all right. Talk about exposure there.
So with exposure here, again, it's really about making sure that we're prioritizing the involvement of different stakeholders. So we really do take, for instance, the winners of the past debates, we have engaged them with the likes of, Jan Sadek, who is the EU head of delegation, in Africa, in Botswana, and we're taking them to various events with the sole purpose of them selling themselves, but most importantly with showcasing their potential and their leadership capabilities as well. So it's one of
Is there a particular age range that you're targeting?
Not so much, because we say young people, and the definition of young people in Botswana is 15 to 35. But what we often see is that we have a lot of graduates who are engaging. But in terms of who is able to join, just any young person. Yeah.
Let's talk about moving beyond dialogues. What is that about, moving beyond dialogues?
So moving beyond dialogues, it's a campaign that we have started where often at times we get a bit exhausted about holding a lot of leadership forums, webinars, we even attend international global forums. However, when we come back, it's all talk, we're not necessarily doing anything. So moving beyond dialogues campaign, it says that once you're at a particular forum, we need to dedicate at least 20% of that towards actually action-led voluntary service. And this allows for us to gain, industry exposure, first-hand exposure, particularly into the different environments that we find ourselves in. But it also is a way to revolutionize networking opportunities, as opposed to being in one place, having your fancy wines or hors d'oeuvres, but now you're actually engaging with somebody of a similar interest by actually being impactful. So that's what we mean by moving beyond dialogues.
I have a daughter who's 16, which is very, very argumentative, and I'm just wondering, off the top of my head as you're talking, whether there's a way I can make her part of this, and what do I have to do as a parent?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a number of ways that they could join. One, what we're currently working on is the Moving Beyond Dialogues consultancy project, which is essentially going to be getting a group of young people. Every month we partner with a particular company, and then we do group-based consultancy project with that company. So they provide the problem set and we do them as solutions. And this, one thing we're seeing is that it offers a seamless transition. We're also talking about unemployment, but more so structural unemployment, right? This offers a seamless transition because it's about gaining the experience and the particular skills that that particular employer is looking for. That's one thing that they could do. They could even join debating, because we have open calls for
Well, I
debaters.
think I want her for the debate team.
That should be great.
What,
we have an open
what does
call.
it take to qualify?
You send us your CV, a brief summary of why you would like to join Debating Botswana, 150 words max, your name and a picture that we'll use. And this is not for screening purposes with the picture, but for advertisement ones, we have that. And yeah, that's it.
You speak of guaranteed internships. Tell us about that. How do you guarantee those internships?
So we work with companies. So we have a project that's called Youth in Development Accelerator Program, where it's about partnering with different employers. And then we devise an intensive graduate scheme training program that's quite specific to what the employer requires from our graduates, so from our participants. And what we do is then they guarantee placements after we finish. The good thing about the Youth in Development Accelerator Program is that it's a quality assurance mechanism. You know as an employer that this is the ideal candidate you're looking for, and you know that you are working with us, particularly in the development stages, so that you can mold this. And then after we finish with the program, you have your ideal employee at entry level.
At a practical level, has any of that occurred, or is it in process?
It's in process. We have a number. We have 4 companies who have offered. We have one that actually within the ICT space that they have given us 10 placements. We have a huge beverage company as well that they too are developing now the graduate scheme, and they will be getting 5 for every cohort. And we even have 2 banks as well who have showed interest. So it's really growing, and we're asking even different stakeholders to join into that program as well.
Okay. Now I'll put you in a call with my daughter to encourage her. Maybe she'll respond.
That's great.
Now, you say you started this in August 2020.
Yes.
Is this? Would it be fair to characterize this as a child of COVID?
Yes, it would. I mean, Debating Botswana, definitely. I love debate. I actually debated before, where I was the UK champion actually 3 times in a row.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Sounds like something a certain Vusi Tembakwayo did.
Yes.
Is it a similar setup?
Absolutely, yeah. So initially when I started Change Africa, the programming entails a lot of skills exchange programs, so internationally. And when the borders closed, all of that had to be halted. So then I thought to myself, I was seeing a lot of social activism, where young people are just talking a lot about their grievances, what they wish they would change. I was like, only if we have a platform where we can formalize this and have it as an institution.
And harness it.
Absolutely. And bring the right people on board instead of just talking on social media. Make sure that you have the likes of Mr. Mogobe who has the resources and even access to the network, right? That will help channel that. And yeah, so it was a brainchild of definitely COVID.
Speaking of COVID, there's a lot of frustration which manifested itself. ATI is the most controversial one, was complaining on social media. Yeah. Do you think that in the end that energy was ever redirected positively in Botswana?
What's tricky about it? So I would say in 2 ways. One is that it was aspirational, right? I think what it did is that it gave more young people or just different communities a platform to understand that actually they're not alone in this, that there's a lot, because I think with COVID-19, especially because now of social media, it really highlighted the inequalities that existed, right? When you're being told to stay at home, you are now with perpetrators of gender-based violence. When you're being told to stay at home, you now cannot continue with education because, well, actually, we don't have the necessary infrastructure to promote, e-learning platforms. And also now about SMEs, where largely the informal sector as well, they relied on, the people outside. So it really exposed a lot of inequalities. And I think now what then with that kind of movement, it gave way to highlight that they actually are not alone in this. I think the fallout is that there was a loss in momentum. And I think I've seen this over time. In my master's paper, I was reflecting on the youth unemployment crisis in Botswana and used the 2016 parliament staging of protest, right, to highlight, well, actually, there's a lot that's missing. I think one, in terms of just being able to successfully mobilize a social movement, and I think is that the loss in momentum comes from the unwillingness of young people or just communities to continue with that. But even more so, we don't necessarily have the structures that promote healthy social activism. And because that's also missing from policy side, you'll never say it, so it will just be about having a voice.
So what do you mean there's been a loss of momentum?
So I mean, it's about the question of what happened to it, right? It's about the question of, we have done the Isemongwaning campaign.
Yeah.
Question is, what happens
Is it
to
still,
it, right?
is it died out or is it still going on?
I mean, so losing momentum, I think for me, it's about dying down.
Yeah.
And it's dying down because people are losing interest, but also because we don't have a vanguard leader. So even the leader himself, or the one who is triggering or starting this thing, they also are not there anymore, right? And that's why I'm saying, well, if we really had an enabling environment that promotes social activism, you'll actually see that propel.
Isn't that where Change Africa comes in?
I think so. So that's the challenge we're having, right? Because our idea is to make sure that we're generating thought leaders and who will know what the problem is, who will understand how they can maneuver the system, who will also be in a better position to get more young people and mobilize resources to make sure that the momentum is still there. And
any success on the subject of thought leadership, has there been any tangible progress? What's happening there?
Absolutely. I mean, for us, one of our KPIs is making sure that we're positioning young people into this leadership. And to date, when we started, we have 16 young people now involved in numerous technical working groups and national, even international leadership platforms. So I think that for us, and they're meaningfully contributing. I think that's the brilliance of it. So it's not just about the symbolic nature of having a young person being in a table with other incredible leaders, but also making sure that they're influencing policies. So I think that's, to date, is definitely a big highlight. Yeah.
Youth leading now. You don't want to postpone the leadership. And before you answer this one, I'm looking at the fact that our political leadership, when we gained independence, was really relatively young compared to now. Are you, in a sense, trying to re-energize that spirit of getting the youngsters to lead?
I mean, absolutely. So what I'm trying to promote is the healthy coexistence of both old and young. Right, understanding, and I think often at times when we're talking about promoting youth leadership, it's almost a bit resistant. There's a lot of resistance around it, and I think this comes from a place that there's an assumption that when young people are leading, it's like the older generation has no place to play, and I definitely do not agree with that. I think what's important is that to co-create, to use experience with talent, to use insight with background knowledge, for instance, right? And I see a perfect marriage with that, which is why with Change Africa, we are, our slogan is on inclusion, engagement, impact. So let's make sure that we're including them in various leadership spaces. Let's make sure that they're co-creating ideas through meaningfully engaging, right? And this is how you can achieve an impact, right? Sustainable development impact. Yeah.
And you've talked about so many debates, 23 as I recall. How do you then allocate prices, and how do you then see whoever wins through to realization of whatever goal and aspiration? Is there a structure in place, or is it still a work in progress?
Yeah. Oh, there's a structure. Debating Botswana is it's highly structured. I mean, because one, for instance, the debate format itself, it's new. It's not your typical debate format, British parliamentary and so on. So it's about training even the adjudicators, right? But also...
Is this similar to what Toastmasters does?
Not so much. Yeah, not so much. I mean, for us, the debate is intended to fashion how you would change an idea into a policy, right? So it takes you through that. And even the adjudication process, it's quite robust. It looks at, you know, your critical thinking abilities. It looks at the ability to advance an argument. It looks at evidence-based research. I mean, even the preparations, it takes about 3 weeks to make sure that the young people who's there, they're actively participating in those debates. You even have the judges ask and critique you during the presentations as well. So it's very inclusive in that regard.
Okay. We often at Angel Network Botswana deal with pitching sessions where entrepreneurs pitch. Is there a sense in which pitching is involved in this?
Yes. So when you think about it, because the winners, they get to do a community-based project with the adjudicators being their mentors. So it's almost like you're pitching to the judges to please be my mentor, but also see that my, you know, my solution is the best and most practical one, right? So there's that element of that. And again, you would realize when you're going through the adjudication process that there's so much to do. It's not just about making sure that you are driving the point home, but it's the delivery, because, which I'm sure you know, through Angel Network Botswana, when you're investing, you're not always investing into the business, but also you're investing into the person. And you need to get to a point where you trust the capabilities of that person. So it's very much aligned with that as well.
You've been part of the Africa Continental Free Trade Youth Forum.
Yes.
Tell us what that was about and what did you accomplish in that forum?
So with the After Youth Forum, so essentially is to look at that, well, we're now having, you know, a free trade agreement for Africa. And the biggest question is, how can we position young people to fully benefit and exploit?
Has Botswana ratified yet?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. That has to happen first, right?
It has to happen.
But anyway, carry on.
Conversations for a different day.
Yes, yes.
But with that, it was really about exploring opportunities where young people in particular can benefit from. My subcommittee, because I was part of the subcommittee that looked at youth unemployment and good governance, so I was reflecting on, you know, the different entrepreneurial activities that young people can do, from inputs to access to market to you know, access to financing, you know, and also more so better relations, so strengthening multi-sectoral linkages with different stakeholders to make sure that, again, young people are in a better position to reap the benefits of AFTA.
Youngsters will be asking themselves, where is the money? Where is the Zaga? Do you see any money in AFTA, and how do we get it?
I see money in the sense of, now we have created a platform where we have opened up you know, the borders. Literally, we've opened up the borders to engage with different stakeholders that otherwise we wouldn't have access to, or it will be more difficult to access. You know, I often say that young people, particularly in Botswana, we're accustomed to think that we get money from government, or if not, private sector involvement in Botswana. But I think with AFTA, what it's affording is that actually the same way as you can go to CBD, you can easily go to Uganda, you can easily go to Rwanda, you can access the different, you can even start a business in Rwanda, and that would be easier because you can tap into the access to financing from that angle. So it's really just about understanding what really AFTA is, understanding how well you can exploit it and benefit from it, but also building relations and knowing that it's about the value chain system, right? So just because you are working within, you know, one industry does not necessarily mean that you cannot cross, you know, in the sense that you can cross borders. You can also look at the value chain of your industry and see how you can partner with those.
All right. One of the, I don't know whether it's a committee or organizations you sit in, the Botswana National Youth Council. How did you get to such a lofty position, and what do you do at Botswana National Youth Council?
So, again, with BNYC, I was selected, identified as one of the young people who are championing just youth empowerment. At the time, I was actually in DC attending a United Nations a forum there, and I got an email. And I think it was again through referral, because I was then asked to provide a CV. And this was when they were going through that due diligence, CV profiling and just achievements to date. And then after that, I was told that I actually had been appointed. What I do at BNYC, so currently I serve in 2 subcommittees, one being industry relations and stakeholder engagement, and the other one looking at good governance. So that puts me in a position to understand how well we can partner and look at the different industries for the welfare of young people, but even really understanding, corporate governance. So understanding what protocols, what policies are instrumental in different institutions and stakeholders, so that we can ensure effective service delivery, right? And as I've highlighted, through BNYC, I was appointed the country's national youth delegate for Commonwealth, of which I was happy to say that it was the first time Botswana was actually selected to campaign for the head of Africa and Europe regional representative for Commonwealth Youth Council, and that is where I was campaigning.
Are you, when is the election? Are you likely to?
Fingers crossed.
To get it, yeah.
Fingers crossed. Unfortunately, is the Commonwealth National Youth Delegates with the voting power, so it's not just the general public. It has to be.
But you have to campaign.
Yes.
The government has to campaign for you also.
Yeah. Yes.
And are they doing a good job?
We're getting there.
What position will you hold then?
I'll be the Commonwealth Youth Council, regional representative for Africa and Europe, meaning the effective head for all young people representing Africa and Europe.
So this is your chance to just say what difference you'll make if you get that position. How will you impact it? In fact, what are you campaigning on?
So I'm campaigning on let's talk more inclusive action. So it's really just about how young people, we need to promote intentional representation. So we need to make sure that we are not talking about representation, but we're being intentional in ensuring that young people are represented in development agenda setting, implementation, and accountability. It's also about inclusion, so making sure that we strengthen multi-sectoral linkages, particularly not just about national youth councils, but even working with different arms of the development structures, and making sure that young people both in Africa and Europe, they're included into various development stakeholders. And most importantly, it's about impact, right? Being impactful. And one thing that I wanted to highlight is that I want to create what I call the Young People, Eurafrica Young People Stories of Hope project.
Stories of
Hope project, which is really about how, how young people in Africa and Europe, they overcome a lot of adversity and position themselves into various successful stories. And that acts in a way that you're being impactful, but also inspiring a generation to do the same.
I think you should cut that portion of the interview and share it and use it as a campaign.
Thank you so much.
As a campaign product or something. All right, and good luck. So when will you know for sure?
Thank you so much. We will know in about a month's time.
Okay, all the best.
Thank you so much.
Human Resources Professional Society of Botswana. What is that? Never heard of it.
Is it? So this is another body that I'm serving in, and this is largely about how we can revamp the human resource human resource department or as an institution in Botswana collectively. So it was started by a gentleman called Mr. Bamile Koko, of which was the head of HR. He is a seasoned HR professional. And what he wanted to do is to make sure that the different HR personnel work together cohesively to promote human capital development in this country, and even going beyond recruitment, but also even highlighting issues of welfare, right? Employee wellness, encouraging, both professional and personal growth strategies. And, it's a growing body, and we're doing really well on it.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Now, I think you're ideally placed to comment on the reset. HE has been talking last two speeches about the need for some sort of paradigm shift and reset in Botswana across the board. What are your impressions on the reset thinking and the speeches? And do you think the reset is achievable? Two questions in one.
So my thoughts on it, I think it's a welcome development. For the longest, we've been talking about striving to become a high-income, knowledge-based society. And it's really about reflecting what that actually means. And if at all we can attribute some sort of positive to COVID-19, is the ability to accelerate a lot of our innovative ideas and innovative thinking, and even pour resources into that. Then that exemplifies that we can actually introduce paradigm shifting mentalities to our country. In terms of it being achievable, I would like to believe so. I think just the biggest problem that we find in Botswana is the disconnect, the inequalities that particularly exist between the haves and have-not. Because so much of the campaign, even Smart Bots campaign, for instance, is quite city-centric, right? We're having, a large number of Botswana still without access to the necessary infrastructure, still without access to internet, smartphones, and yet we want to promote that. So I think we still have a long way to go, if at all we really want to talk about the reset. But it's not always bleak. It's about starting somewhere, but ensuring that we are actually starting.
Do you think that there's been a positive response to HE's message, especially among the youth?
So, to a large extent, yes. I do think from the grievances and often at times the platforms that we engage with the young people, to them, it's about what other more pressing issues are we dealing with, right? Unemployment, systematic poverty, just about patriarchy in itself being such a debilitating factor, that negatively affects, the girl child, right? And yet we are promoting innovation this side. So what Ben is doing is that it's open up avenues to explore and exploit different entrepreneurial abilities. But again, it's about, sometimes it's about misallocation of resources, or often at times it's about priorities.
Okay. Redefining empowerment. It's used normally as a blanket statement, isn't it, empowerment? But you argue that it needs to be redefined.
Yeah. Can
you unpack that for us?
So, in simple terms, redefining empowerment for me is that before, whenever we used to talk about empowerment, it was an arbitrary imposition. So we used to speak about this is what this community would need, right? You will actually see there's a lot from the way the first world views the third world, right? You come up with programming that you think the third world would need, and then you bring an already designed toolkit so that you can develop the so-called developing world. However, these terminologies continue to exist for so long, right? I think it's the same kind of logic that we're applying, that we used to apply with empowerment, that we will design specific programs for the empowerment of a girl child, empowerment of a young person, but without actually including them into the ideation stage, right? So what then I see as the way to redefine it is to make sure that we are including whoever, or the target or the core beneficiaries that are included in the core creation of whatever programming, right? The processing, and also making sure that in the end results, it's not just about, okay, now you have the ability, you have the capabilities, go on to the world, right? But also being intentional in ensuring that we're creating the spaces and the platform where now they can get to exercise, you know, their voices and meaningfully contribute. So I think that's what I call redefining empowerment.
Makes perfect sense, and I really like how you define it, because it goes down to issues of relevance and necessity and urgency.
Absolutely.
And it's tailor-made for the community.
Absolutely.
In other words, you're talking about bottom up as opposed to top down.
Top down, yes.
Yeah. Taking initiative, you know, in terms of these forums, perhaps you could just wrap it up and help us understand that one.
So taking initiative, it's really about instilling a culture of go-getters, right? I was humbled enough to be invited in Germany to do a TED Talk, and I called it Redefining Academic Excellence.
Where can we get it?
It's on YouTube, yes.
You just type your name.
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay.
And it's about embracing the C student. So I did this analogy of saying we have the A student, the B student, the C student. The A student are those that resort to the assortment of alcohol and the pleasures of life when things get difficult, right? The B student are the typical bookworms, those especially in Botswana who are socialized into thinking that
A stands for alcohol, B bookworm.
Bookworm, right?
Okay,
yes.
yeah.
So it's the typical where, you know, education is the route to success, is the key to success, and all you do is focus on, you know, being in the library to get your A stars. However, when you go out in the real world, you can't even get a job because, well, everyone now is the same on paper, right? You would have forgotten, you know, to get other things as well. Now, the C is the chaser, those that take initiative, the proactive student, right? Those that realizes that life is not always about what you're taught in school, but also about what you can learn outside. And what we want to do at Change Africa, and even just you know, intrinsic to who I am, is to encourage young people to take initiative, to be bold enough to understand that you need to be proactive, you need to go beyond what you are given, and that is where actually your potential, that is where you can exploit it and realize it.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Let's just talk about Change Africa as an overriding concept. We want to change Africa, but what we want it to look like. Is there an ideal society or community or country which we are benchmarking against or considering as an ideal? I've heard people talk about UAE, Singapore, the US, Canada. And I've also taken the view, why should we reimagine ourselves being like other people? Why can't we find our own?
Why can't we?
Yeah, so I want you really to speak to that.
Afrocentric Africanism, right?
Yes, yes.
What's interesting about Change Africa is that really its vision, again, and rightfully stating, it's about being able, because of globalization, we cannot hide from the fact that we are competing with other countries, other economies. But really, it's about being able to tap into our fullest potential, and that potential being enough to compete into the global space. And what you would realize, for instance, with the likes of New Zealand, with the likes of Finland, if I can use Finland with their education system, is that it's not necessarily, when it was developed, it wasn't developed to be compared to other countries. It was really looking at the fulfillment and the development of well-informed, well-rounded, valuable leaders in their community. And with that, it's about how then can we create that person, right? And they get to devise a system that's specific to Finland. And now, what is the rest of the world doing? Now they're emulating and they're trying to learn from Finland. I think what Change Africa is that there's nothing stopping us by actually developing things that are intrinsic to us that the rest of the world can actually learn from. In particular, one of the, even though some people may not believe, but Botswana's policies actually on paper, they're amongst the most brilliant policies on paper. And actually you have other countries benchmarking from. And I think often at times the problem is the implementation process and at the end accountability structures, right? With Change Africa, it's really about, we can say that we have the capabilities, we already have the resources in terms of raw materials. We even now have leadership, the likes of Mr. Mogobe, Kaene Disepo, shamelessly putting myself there.
Thank you.
We even have, the human capital. So what is it that's stopping us? And I think the more we delve into that, the more we nudge out these issues of greed, selfishness, corruption, wanting to do things for your own benefit, the more then we can start to realize that actually we can do things the right way, and by extension even become richer, case in point, the country now, or the leader who earns the most in terms of revenue being, in terms of their annual salary, right, is the Singaporean head of state. And it's not through corruption, but it's because of the development of Singapore that affords them to pay.
Literally salary.
Do you hear what I mean? So I think it's just one of those things that, look, already we have the capabilities, we have the resources, we have the skills. So now it's about being innovative enough to actually change Africa through the Afrocentric African way.
Okay. Well answered, well answered.
Thank you so much.
Now, if you were to grab a crystal ball and look 5, 10, even 20 years down the line at Change Africa, at the other organization you created, the Debate Botswana, what do you see? What is the actual thing that you imagined? Let's do the vision thing.
The vision thing. One, the most obvious one, is us being the go-to institution for policy reform. We want to make sure that the debates that are debated at Parliament, right, resources, reference points is coming from Change Africa. 2, we want to be at the helm of innovative thinking in Africa as a whole. So again, it's really just about, and now we're working with the likes of Botswana Innovation Hub. We even have partnerships outside that looks at promoting access to, good, clean water and sanitation processes. Again, it's about making sure that we're working with, key stakeholders into various innovative processes.
Will you be providing, in that future that you imagine, will you be providing youth leaders to be part of those organizations?
Yes.
Or how is it going to work?
So again, because of our training program, we would have a database of youth leaders, right? Exceptional thought leaders. So that's one. But 2, it's about it being a think tank in itself. So generating research and policies that can be debated in Parliament. And then 3, it's about access to innovative tools. So actually even doing project development to come up with innovative tools that will be used to sustain and promote livelihoods.
Okay. Have you considered, talking of think tanks, teaming up or somehow linking up with the government's think tank, which is BITBA, which happens to be our anchor tenant in this building?
I have. I'm yet to submit the proposal. I remember at the time, Dr. Khape, when he was still at BITBA, I had highlighted that I'm interested in doing some sort of think tank, institute of ideas for young people, but I'm yet to submit.
Okay, then maybe when you reflect on this interview, you will dust that proposal and have it submitted.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much.
This is your chance to hit me with a question, sir.
Okay, so I think my question, it will be on, having talked about really the need for for young people to be included and having, that sort of culture of intentional representation. What part do you think you can play now in promoting that?
I consciously surround myself with young people, not just because which is we say in Setswana, but because they are more exciting. They have they're more prepared to try things, and they also empower me. The guys who are running this program are much younger than me, less than half my age, I think. And even in Mogobe Inc., where the average age, I think, it's probably 30 or some 35.
Fantastic.
And in addition to that, if you go to the restaurants and our other businesses, you see they're populated by young people. So I think not only because they are a major human resource, but because they constitute the biggest number of the labor force. You find yourself having to deal with them, and it's a very exciting prospect. I mean, I just got my son officially introduced as part of the employment structure in the company, in an effort to revive and energize the company through young blood. So we're physically involved with them. In addition to that, we set up mentorship programs, both through Angel Network Botswana, but also directly on my own, where I meet them, youngsters, I interact with them, I try to empower them and also learn from them. So it's a work in progress, and the guys who are running our law firm upstairs, they're very young as well.
Absolutely.
So I find that working with young people is very exciting, and I consider myself to be a senior youth myself. Consider myself to be young at heart.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that more people actually can follow through that path as well.
All right. Okay. Here's your chance to inspire, as you also share your contacts, to inspire those youngsters out there who may be looking at you, young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs of all stripes. Go ahead and leave them with a parting, a motivational message.
So, growing up, I strived to be a leader in my own right, and oftentimes because of the way we're socialized, that has proved very difficult. Having finished my high school in a one room in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Gaborone, aluminum, zinc, it really cemented a renewed sense of purpose for me, to understand my value, my worth, and most importantly, to understand the leadership within me. I say this, that you are never defined by your circumstances, but how you overcome them. And, I, to date, have represented Botswana in over 30 global forums, speaking on youth employment, governance, education, and social reform. And I think it goes insofar as highlighting that actually you can have more of Kaene and even better versions of Kaene Disepo. So please rest assured that we're never defined by circumstances, but how we overcome them. And where you could find just the little projects that I do from a day to day, we have Change Africa on Facebook and even Twitter. And then the other one, we have Inspired Horizons Association. My name is Kaene Disepo on all my social media handles. So that is where you can find me.
Is there WhatsApp or email contact?
There is email, kdisepo@changeafrica.co, not com. So kdisepo@changeafrica.co. And our work line, which also has WhatsApp, is 74796087. That's 74796087.
Thank you very much. You've been a very powerful guest. I really appreciate what you've said and what you've shared. I'm hoping that you'll come back, maybe talk a little bit more about your debating skills and how you've managed to win 3 times in a row.
Absolutely.
That is a skill set in itself, and it is deserving of a conversation on its own.
Thank you so much.
So do come again when you invite you.
Thank you so
much. And we
much.
certainly want to be part of what you're doing. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
All right.